And welcome everyone. I think I could see a few familiar faces from us as well, which is really nice. I think Grace, I just need to be given share access and then, okay, perfect. We've got share access and we're good to go. Yeah, so if anyone did happen to be on our live presentation last time or attended the Dyslexia in London event that they had this Dyslexia Awareness Month just gone, welcome back, and yeah, nice to see you again. And if you're new, welcome. And I hope that this is going to be an informative and valuable presentation. You'll also see that you've got another one of my team here. She's just here also to like ask any questions if there's any tech issues. So she's also just on hand as well if you see her chatting to you as well. So we're dyslexia in adults, and we started with me 5 years ago because I was really struggling with my dyslexia. I was working at Amazon and feeling like everything was taking me longer. I wasn't kind of delivering what I wanted to feel like was kind of my potential. And I just felt like my career was being really impacted. I was kind of choosing things based on what I thought wouldn't impact my challenges too much. And I really wanted that to change. So I started Dyslexia in Adults as an Instagram account just for myself to kind of talk about the reality of that. We're now at over 50,000 followers, which is madness. I still remember when we got 10. And I'm also an executive function coach, which covers working memory, which is one of the things we're going to be talking about in time. If you enjoyed today's presentation, we are available for coaching. We also do workplace trainings as well. So if you do want us to come into your workplace and give some advice and support, we also do that. So just a couple of options for kind of further support. So just quickly, in case this is useful at all, we wanted to share how to turn on captions because a lot of people find captions really helpful. Okay, I don't think you can hear my sound, but it's basically just explaining the value of captions.
Quick way to make this presentation more accessible for anyone on Zoom is you're going to go ahead and turn on captions. The way you turn on captions is you're going to go to the bottom right-hand corner, click More. Once you click More, you'll select Captions. Then from there, a captions menu will open and you'll be able to click Show Captions. You can also adjust your language and other caption settings. Once you click Show Captions, you select your language and then captions will appear on the screen.
So something that you can do in this presentation and going forward in case that's useful for you. And with these things, it's always just best to try, see if it works. And if it does, keep going. And it's not always about it being a silver bullet, but just one or two things that can like add up to things being really helpful. So, what are we going to be discussing today? We're going to help you understand a little bit about why you might struggle with interviews as a dyslexic person. We really strongly believe that understanding dyslexia is integral to helping you build good strategies. So, we're going to give you a bit of education on dyslexia. And then we also want to help you identify exactly what the problem is, because what we often find is that people say that they struggle with something, but they don't really understand exactly what is dyslexia and what is them. So we're going to help you kind of go, oh, it's that right there. And if you've attended my presentations before, you know the thing that we are trying to help you with in this case is helping you be proactive with these problems. What we don't want is for you to kind of go into a situation and sit there and go, oh, now I've got a problem. We want you to know about that problem in advance and know that it's likely to happen, then work back to build strategies and systems or kind of feel like there's a bit of acceptance of kind of how your brain works. So we're going to teach you a little bit about dyslexia, help you feel really clear and confident on what is going on to be able to kind of identify what is your challenges, build strategies accordingly. And then we've got some great tips, mind shapes, and strategies to really help you with interviewing. So here we go. First part is this context piece. So like I said, we like to help you understand dyslexia. Personally, because dyslexic people are big picture thinkers. So once we give you that overview of what is going on in your brain, it should be easier to help to understand everything. So we start at the top and then we go down. That's the way that dyslexic people like to learn. And we're going to kind of share a little bit of these little types of bits and pieces that you can also pick up for your everyday life as well. I think it's also worth mentioning a lot of the things we're about to talk about are classic challenges you might also face in meetings. So we've taken the idea of interviews, but often if you struggle in meetings, or you feel like when someone talks to you verbally, you feel like you're getting a bit confused, a lot of these strategies can help in other areas of life. So if you haven't got an interview coming up, but you want some good strategies, these will really help. So let's get into understanding interviews. The first piece of the puzzle is working memory. So if you've been kind of around the block a little bit on managing working memory, you probably know that this is a term that comes up a lot with dyslexia. Or if you're a little bit newer to your diagnosis, this is definitely a term you want to really do a little bit of a deep dive on and make sure you understand. But I'm going to start by giving you a really basic overview. So for everyone, this is how everyone's brain works. When information comes in, verbally usually, what happens is it gets held in a little post-it note in our brain called working memory. And that is a small place for information to be held for a short period of time that then our brain can go off and do other things with, either store it in different types of memory or kind of go to the filing cabinet and kind of get the information if it's a question someone has asked you. So it's a small little part of our brain that we use to process new information and figure out what to do with it. So that might be processing a question, processing the directions on where the toilet is, or it might be kind of someone's name that they've given you. These are all examples of working memory being utilized. So what happens is for dyslexic people is that working memory is a little bit smaller, so its capacity of what it can hold is smaller than other people. And that's why when someone gives you instructions on where the toilet is, you go, can't remember what they said after the first one, or I can only remember the last one. Or in an interview example, that's why when someone gives you a two-part question, you go, "Ooh, I don't know what they said." So because of that reduced capacity, it can be really hard for us to hold information in our head. Or also when you walk into a room and you're like, oh my God, why am I here? That's also working memory. So here's the tricky bit that comes in particularly with interviews that we wanted to highlight. So cortisol for everyone impacts working memory. So the capacity we have in an interview setting where we've got that heightened amount of stress and that little bit of extra worry means that our reduced capacity on working memory gets even smaller, which means recalling details, responding to questions, or kind of that overall confidence we have of being able to do things the way we would like can feel like it's reduced. Often things can feel a lot harder when cortisol or stress is involved with our working memory. So if you feel like your dyslexia gets worse in front of some people, or you feel like you get worse when you're tired, you're not crazy. This is actually what happens. The other struggle we wanted to talk about is we kind of talk about dyslexic people being these like big picture thinkers and being able to see all of the ways that things are intertwined with stuff. Or the way that we kind of understand something is very intertwined and there's lots of parts to something. So being able to kind of have that non-linear thinking, so we don't just kind of go, okay, here's the problem, here's the solution, here's this. It doesn't really work like that. It's kind of a little bit more spread out and kind of like lots of different parts and pieces that come into the way that we think. Now, these have amazing opportunities in the way that we see things and the way that we create interconnections with stuff, or the way we're able to kind of explain things in an interesting way. But in an interview setting, being able to kind of go, you've asked me this question, here's bam, 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 bam point can be really difficult. So what that might feel like is with regards to nonlinear thinking, it means that you struggle to get your point across in a clear step-by-step way. And you might feel like you lose track on your main idea, or you kind of bring in extra things because you've kind of seen a connection and you kind of are like adding too much in and it gets a little bit confused. Or just maybe you just got this feeling that you just like haven't really explained yourself well, or you're worried that you feel like you've been misunderstood and you get quite frustrated in the way that you've communicated. This can often be a really common feeling with regards to the way that we see the world and the connections we create. So often for many dyslexic people, that means an increased amount of stress and anxiety can reduce our ability to process things. We also have that fear of how we're going to communicate and present our ideas. And ultimately, past experiences have led to low confidence and can feel like it's just like, oh, what is even the point? Like it just never goes well. So we've kind of talked a little bit about what is going on in your mind and where you might be struggling. And here are some of those real life examples that might kind of add a little bit to what I talked about. Again, what we're kind of saying here is that for many people, it does feel really impossible to handle interviews. And it can just feel like we're just kind of extremely frustrated in ourselves. So, a little bit of this section is also about helping you realize that you are not alone. It is not just you, there is over 700 million dyslexic people. So, it's not a you issue, it is like a lot of people facing this. So, working memory operates at a lower capacity, and that means that recalling key details or important information like dates, names, or like kind of metrics in your interview can feel really, really difficult. And kind of being able to process all of those things under pressure makes it even more frustrating. And then, like that kind of lack of ability to kind of process things correctly can lead to a lot of self-doubt. It also can mean that the way that we process information can be really difficult. So it might take you longer to fully understand a question or really create a kind of a meaningful, clear response to it as we kind of assimilate all of our thoughts and also the question and kind of putting it together in a way that's like meaningful and thoughtful can be really hard when we need extra time to process things or to kind of break down our thoughts succinctly. And then finally, that nonlinear thinking. And I know this is something I'm so guilty of. If I don't think through clearly and effectively of what I'm trying to say, my answers just feel like they're going around in circles. And I think to myself, did I really answer their question? Or did I just kind of like put two or three points together and just smush it in a way that I talked for a long time, but did I really say anything meaningful? Also, if you get asked kind of two-part questions, which can be really common for complex job interviews, it can be really hard to lose track of all the components, and then you get frustrated and embarrassed when you're like, wait, did I answer that question? Was that what you asked? And it could feel like you kind of not quite responded to the whole part of the question, or your answers feel like you kind of got some of them but not got all of them, or holding all of the answers and holding the question in your head just feels like a mountain that you have to cover. Okay, so hopefully, and I'm sure you resonated with a lot of those of we've talked about and the kind of pieces that we often see with interviews. And where we're going to go now is talking a little bit about the strategies. But if you want to pop in the chat, one of the things you resonated most with regards to the challenges, whether or not it was working memory or ability to process your thoughts correctly, or just this general feeling of like the whole experience is just really overwhelming because of your past experience. Pop in the chat which one you feel like is kind of resonating most with you, because it is really useful to both process things by just jotting that down, but also to see the interconnections and realize that you are by far not alone. So yeah, before we move on to strategies, pop in the chat quickly the one that you felt like resonated with you most. Okay. So here is some of the ways that we're going to help you manage. Now we've got 8 strategies today, so we've got a lot of different bits and pieces that we're going to be talking through. And it really is worth mentioning that each one of these are going to work for a different situation and a different scenario. So don't feel like you have to kind of utilize all of them. Pick one or two that work best for you and give it a go and see how you get on. The other thing that I just want to kind of remind you is that if you have an interview coming up, meetings are a perfect example to test drive a lot of these strategies, because meetings and interviews kind of similar situations with regards to responding to what someone said and processing your thoughts correctly. So if you want to try any of these out in mini meetings, they're a great way to kind of get a sense if this strategy works or to kind of really bed it in so it feels natural. Okay. So, first of all, we've got this idea of filler phrases. And this is one of my all-time favorite things to teach someone when it regards to kind of processing speed. So a lot of the time when someone asks me something that I'm just like not quite sure on what to say or not quite sure what to do, and I get asked questions on the spot all the time, is I'm really good at just a simple phrase that buys me 5 to 10 seconds. You don't need a minute to process something. You often just need a couple of seconds. So I might say, "Oh, okay, that's a good question. Let me think about that." Or I might say, okay, so you want to know blah, blah, blah. And just by simply repeating things can really give you a great couple of seconds to like calm down on any anxiety that's kind of spiking on your working memory and give you that processing time. Again, it doesn't have to be, I'm dyslexic and I don't really understand what you said. It can just be as simple as, that's a great question. When was the last time I had to manage an underperforming employee? Probably in my last job, let me think back to that experience. And you see how just that couple of seconds didn't have to feel awkward or uncomfortable, but just allowed me that processing time. The other thing we want to think about is that as our brain goes on throughout the day, we do really start to fatigue as dyslexic people. And accepting the reality of being different is really important when it comes to dyslexia. So often, if I have something really important, I will try and schedule it in the morning because we know that we fatigue as the day goes on. And so trying to kind of put your best foot forward often means working in the morning. Now, lots of different people have kind of crossover with ADHD and dyslexia, and so ADHD can impact your circadian rhythm and means that you're kind of more of a night owl. So just make sure that you think about what works best for you and just really care about that when you're scheduling it. Don't just accept whatever time they give you. If the mornings work better for you, try and push for that. Just try and have the confidence to realize that you're just trying to do your best. Now, for the third one, we wanted to talk through a little bit the STAR method and how that might kind of help you organize and prepare your thoughts. So, for example, the STAR method is like a way of kind of organizing your thoughts. And what we're thinking here is that this could be a really nice way for you to bring in notes. So alongside this presentation, we have a guide on kind of how to write notes for an interview and how to kind of like think about the information you might need to bring. Because if you're looking down at notes and then you're kind of like trying to read them and trying to answer the question can be really difficult. So if you want to kind of bit of detail on that, we've got that guide alongside this presentation. But the STAR method is basically a really popular interview technique. And it basically says, like, start with the situation of what happened. Then what did you do? Like, as in, when we talk about that underperforming employee, you could say, they've been working for 2 years and we had kind of like done this and done this, but it just wasn't working. Finally accepted that there was an issue. The task might be putting a performance plan in place. Then the action might be kind of how you went about that or what steps you took with regards to working with HR to create that performance plan. And then the result, like, did their performance improve or did you just mutually decide to let them go? It's just that kind of same concept of this overview. And the one thing that we like to think about is that dyslexic people like to start with the overview and then go down. So actually, if you think about the STAR method, it fits very nicely with how we like to explain things. Start with that overall overview and then go down in detail. So it can be quite a dyslexic friendly way of presenting things when you think about it like that you're just starting with the big picture and the overview and then going down. So it can be really helpful way to kind of organize your thoughts and feel prepared for questions of having a few key examples that you want to talk about put out in the STAR method. And like I said, if you want to think about how to bring in notes effectively for an interview in a dyslexic friendly way, we do have that guide alongside this. But we did also kind of want to just give you a bit of an overview on what that includes. So basically what we're trying to say is that we don't want to have really long written out phrasings and examples because it's going to be really hard to process what that says and then communicate it. Now, I know that seems like a really obvious thing to say, but I actually had a coaching client about a year ago who was going for an interview with the police. And when he showed me, and he had failed 3 times in his interviews and was really upset about it and wanted to get this promotion. This was his last try. And so I said, okay, can you show me what your notes are that you've brought into the interview? And he had a full written script. I was like, there's no way in hell you're going to be able to process that correctly in an interview. So what we need is to be able to jot down trigger words or key thoughts. Or maybe you want to kind of think about some questions you may want to ask at the end, because we know that that processing speed is going to be difficult as the interview goes on. So kind of thinking about how to really process things. The other thing with regards to taking notes is we want to think about the fact that you've got working memory challenges. So if someone asks you a two-part question or you've got a great thought in the middle of someone's question, jot it down. Bring a notebook and write it down. It can really help you process what you've just heard and make sure you don't kind of get confused with your idea and the question. It's really important to think about this as a positive. It's not embarrassing to have to write down the question or to write down some of your thoughts, because it shows that you are taking it seriously and you are an organized person and that you know what works for you. People want you to do their best and they don't care how you do your best as long as they're able to see your best. So consider taking notes both into an interview and taking them during to navigate any working memory issues. Next, we wanted to take a moment and think about like, okay, so maybe you are like, oh, I want to ask for help, but I'm a little bit like unsure of what to ask for, and I just feel really embarrassed about it. I want to start by saying I have had so many clients ask for help or like ask for support in an interview, and I have not yet had a single person have a negative response. So if your kind of gut reaction is that people are going to kind of get upset or get angry, that's not been the experience of vast majority of my clients. I can't think of a single negative experience any of my clients have had. And the reason why you often want to ask for questions or topics in advance is because it allows you to better organize and process your thoughts to be able to then come in and present them clearly. So if you feel like that piece of kind of messy answers or forgetting key facts is a big part of your challenges, and getting the questions out early is a really useful tool. And again, it doesn't have to feel embarrassing or difficult. You can say, I'm really excited about the upcoming interview for the job. Would it be possible to receive the interview questions in advance? This would help me better prepare and ensure that my responses are thorough. I had a little dyslexic reading aloud moment there. So basically what we're trying to say is that if you give me this, this will help me do my best. And that's really all we need to know. If you are kind of thinking to yourself, yeah, okay, maybe, I also just want to remind you that this is a legally protected thing that you can ask for. So the Equality Act is very clear that dyslexia is covered and that asking for questions in advance is a reasonable adjustment. So again, firstly, my clients have had a positive experience, so you definitely should not feel too scared. If you do have any negative responses, I do want to remind you that the law is on your side and that they should be offering you this. And thirdly, deliver it confidently, because if you just say to them, this will help me do my best, this is something I've got in the past, there's nothing that can go wrong, because often when you do something confidently, people just respond to that confidence well. So, if you want to bring in notes to your interview, it's a reminder that we want to look at brain joggers or kind of key points and key statistics you don't want to forget. Having these key things to hand means that you kind of ensure that you look prepared and you don't get bogged down in like loads of detail. You can have a quick look down and kind of keep on track and keep confident. I think the thing that I often hear people say about bringing in notes is like, oh, well, I don't want to look like I forget things. And if I had someone come to an interview with detailed notes before their interview, I would never think that they were disorganized or like had bad memory issues. I'd be like, wow, that person is really on it and has really thought through what they want to say, and I would be really impressed. So it's really just about flipping your mindset on this one. And if you also want to pop in the chat, have you ever brought in notes before? Have you ever asked for things in advance before? Has it you find it's gone well? I'd love to like, I'm sure people will be interested in your experience as well. So the other thing that it's also really important to remember that getting extra time, if you are doing any tests or any kind of presentation work, is really normal. So at 15 minutes to reduce stress can go a really long way. Remember that stress is the biggest impact on your working memory. So when you come in and you're kind of processing what you need to do and what's going on, you're going to be a rabbit in the headlights at first, and kind of having that extra 15 minutes to kind of calm yourself down, think about things correctly, and plan properly can make a huge difference. So even if you feel like you don't need it, just the opportunity to reduce your stress could go a long way. One thing that I have seen people ask for as well in advance is that if they can't get the questions a day or two in advance, sometimes they get given the questions an hour in advance and they're able to sit in the meeting room and think through the answers. So again, that's another kind of way of thinking about getting extra time if you feel like you're going to get that pushback. The reason why we also include scripts is that it really is about delivering these things confidently. So if you've done this in the past and you felt like it hasn't gone well, I want to remind you that it is about doing things confidently. So, hi, I'm looking forward to our interview, and would it be possible to add in 15 minutes to the interview, help me provide more thoughtful answers and keep me more relaxed during the interview? Really is just about reminding them that if they give you this, it will help you do your best, and that's what they want from you. Now, I always kind of, as a kind of fellow dyslexic person who used to struggle a lot with dyslexia, I'm always really conscious of like not making things kind of too woo-woo or like too kind of like Captain Obvious. But I know for myself that I really do not appreciate the kind of importance of like having a moment to lower my anxiety and just kind of like bring my executive functions online. So we know that working memory and kind of your planning and prioritization and thought processes with regards to executive functions really are impacted by stress. So making sure that you're able to kind of go there in advance and just like sit and think through and take a couple of breaths really will help you think more clearly and effectively. It's not just kind of like one of those things that you should do. It really is science. And it's one of those things that a lot of people probably know they should do, but maybe you're not really prioritizing yourself as well as you should do. So this is my reminder to think about kind of bringing yourself back to center as a kind of key part of managing dyslexia. Okay, that is the end of the presentation, and we've got plenty of time for questions. So looking forward to hearing if anyone's got any upcoming interviews or anything that they want to kind of talk through. Grace, I don't know if you're there to kind of facilitate any of the questions. Oh, I can
Yeah.
see
Do
oh,
you
we've got
see
one.
them?
Yes,
Okay,
I
great.
can see there's one here from Amy. So Amy says, I always take notes and recently had an interview where I got questions early and made notes and got feedback saying I was very organized and they loved that they could see that I had done the research. Amy, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Makes a huge difference to like think about it like that instead of saying like, oh, like I'm this or I'm that. People are like, oh, okay, you want to prepare? Yeah, sure, great. And often it can be completely the other way around that we really think it is. So yeah, I completely agree, Amy. Anyone, any other questions or anyone else want to ask anything? Again, if you've got specific circumstances or you want to kind of get more detail on some of the strategies we talked about, that's also great.
Natalie, a question I think would be maybe useful for some people in our community is maybe I know we've had some people that were laid off or like lost their job, and it gets complicated in terms of whether that was for because of like their dyslexia and that not being handled properly. I think one of the questions would be like in terms of if someone was getting a job after being laid off, like how to answer that question, or to ask about like last employment.
Yeah, okay, great question. So firstly, I have had multiple employment issues due to my dyslexia. So you are not alone. It is like incredibly normal. A lot of my clients have as well. And there is more than you realize that is available to you under the Equality Act. Dyslexia in London have done a great job of sharing a lot of those. And we do have a podcast as well, sharing some of your legal rights if you want to check that out. So I think that's the first thing to say. The second thing to say is I think there's nothing wrong with saying like it wasn't the right role for me or the right kind of company style. Because the thing I always say to kind of people whenever they're like going for a job hunt is that you want to remember that you're not built for every role, every company, every situation, and that's okay. It's okay that there's only like a certain number of companies and roles that are going to really suit you, and you got to flip your mindset from like, ugh, like this doesn't work and that doesn't work to cool, these are the ones that work. And when I'm in a place that works, I'm able to offer a lot of the great things and things are really easy for me. So trying to kind of flip your narrative and be picky, listen to the red flags that you see in interview and realize that the people that were rude to you, like it is a statement on them, not a statement on you, and try and kind of like reframe the narrative. What I often see is that dyslexic people are impacted by bad systems more than others. So often when people have been let go or they've had difficult situations in work, the company has had bad systems and structures, and then it has impacted the dyslexic person deeper because we're able to fall through those cracks sooner. So often it's not really anything to do with you and the bad company culture that just kind of kicked off a chain of events. So yeah, I would see that it is a statement on them and I would just kind of keep it to myself and just say that the workplace wasn't right. And this is the kind of workplace you are looking for.
Thank you. And then we have a question, if you can see it in the
Oh yeah. Okay, great.
great.
Sophia. She says she has an interview this afternoon. Amazing. I suppose I'm concerned about the potential for a word salad at the moment today. Yeah, I see you, Sophia. I'm a word salad kind of gal too. I know it, but I'm really fearful about losing my train of thought. I wonder if you could go over some of the internal positive monologue that could be helpful during the interview process. Yeah, so I think it really is going back to what I said, if this is really just about helping you do your best. So trying to slow things down to sh put your best foot forward is really what we're trying to do here. So kind of thinking to yourself, okay, I've rambled a little bit, but I can pull this back. Like I can do my best. I do know what I'm saying. And often what I find is when I've rambled, I can kind of clean it up quite nicely afterwards because I've started to get my thoughts together. So sometimes I even find myself going, sorry, let me clarify that. What I'm trying to say is, and just remember that people want you to do well. They're not willing you to do badly. They're not sat there going like, she's messing this up. They're kind of just sat there going, okay, like I hope she kind of gets her thoughts together, or I hope she's able to communicate clearly. So if you need to use filler phrases, if you need to write down what someone said, if you need to kind of jot down a few of your thoughts before you answer, better to do that because people are willing you on to do well. So, and then if everything goes awry, just clean it up at the end and be like, sorry, let me clarify all of that. But just try and manage your stress because if you're sat there going like, I'm gonna make a fool of myself, I'm gonna make a fool of myself, I'm gonna make a fool of myself, you're just adding to the chances it's gonna happen. So that's a little bit of my tips. What is the best way to use your notes in an effective way? Sophia adds, yeah, just exactly like we said, trying to keep it really concise, key joggers, key thoughts, so like 1 or 2 words rather than like full sentences, because just think about processing speed when it comes to dyslexia. You'd have to answer the question, flick to the relevant page, and then look down, find the right section, read it, like kind of process what it says, then give an answer. It's not going to happen. Let's be real with ourselves. 1 word is a lot higher chance of kind of like organizing yourself correctly. So just keep it brief. Oh, and Katie says there's also a guide that's going alongside that with how to organize your notes as well. So got covered in both bases.
Great. If anyone has any other questions, feel free to type them in. But also one of the things I think you mentioned, Natalie, is that you do have a podcast. So I would love if you could just kind of share some of the resources you all have at your organization and
Yeah, thank you.
yeah, stay in touch.
So we have a lot of free resources. So we're Dyslexia and Adults, both in the podcast and our social media. So you can find us there. We share lots of free resources where you can kind of check out all of the details. And we've got interviewing. It's a little bit back. You have to scroll back a little bit, but we've got a lot on interviewing in previous episodes, and we've also got the legal rights episodes that were a couple of episodes ago. So they're great ones to check out. Got a free guide that you can download as well that covers a few of these different bits and pieces. And also, if anyone does want to book us for a corporate talk as well, that's also available, where we can kind of talk through what is dyslexia and how to kind of access the strengths and deal with the challenges.
Great, thank you so much. I mean, if this is all the questions we have, then just for everyone who's watching this, this will be available on demand on our website. You can also find a similar slash same webinar Natalie did in December that's already available. And yeah, of course, you can stay in touch with Natalie and her organization's work on the social media platforms and on their website as well. So thank you so much, Natalie, for this. I think this is really helpful, and it's definitely something I know our community appreciates getting more and more insight on.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time, Grace. It was really
Yeah,
lovely
of
to
course.
talk with you. Speak to you soon.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.